in our age. So, talking about trade, but this is much later. This is a new kingdom that's even after the Battle of Kadesh, basically. This, I don't know what to call it, tribe, because it wasn't a nation. The Phoenicians had their own language, and that's why they were one thing, but they never really united. They were city-states. And what is special about them is that they're not a river valley civilization. They are a sea trading civilization. They were all over the Mediterranean Sea. They established colonies, all over. And those colonies were trading. That's how they were making money. They were trading, and trading all sorts of goods, from slaves to wood, oil, olive oil, name it. Originally, if you go way back in time, this is the people living there, and this found in the tomb that gives an idea of the kind of houses they had. And they had its own god called El. So anyway, this prehistory of the religions of that part of the world. It was occupied by Egypt before the Battle of Kadesh, and you can see some of the things that they were trading if you're curious. There were some of the things that were special in some places. I think actually Cyprus means copper, and the trade was extensive. So these were the first people who probably had a broad knowledge of the world. Maybe not all the way to India and China, but at least Europe, Southern Europe, Northern Africa, Middle East. And these city-states gets richer and richer. That's another interesting story that I would say I will do in 1 minute. But you had the big empires fighting wars at that point, right? You had the Assyrians, then the Babylonians, and the Egyptians, the Spaniards, the Hittites there. But then the ones who get really rich are actually these city-states are very teeny, probably have an army only to defend their economic interests. But because they focus on trade, and because they're capitalistic, they actually get really rich and eventually very powerful.
And what unified the Phoenicians if they're all separate city-states?
Phoenicians were never unified, never.
Were
never united. There was just the language.
Oh, so
that's why I said tribe.
Language alone would
It's like when you talk about the Sumerians, exactly the same thing.
Got it. Okay.
It's like when you talk about the ancient Greeks, actually. Say Greece, but Athens and Sparta were never united until somebody conquered them. Okay. And in fact, the most famous of these cities is Carthago in Latin, because Rome fought 3 famous wars against this city. That was a Phoenician city, but it was not the Phoenician Empire, which is one of them, the most powerful at the time. So of course, this triggered the Phoenicians achieved major technological progress in 2 areas. Shipbuilding, they're the first ships that could cross the Mediterranean. In fact, there's some evidence they might have circumnavigated Africa way before the Portuguese. But they certainly created a colony on the other side of Morocco and on the Atlantic side, so they went beyond Gibraltar. And navigation, they knew how to navigate the open sea. So that's major. Before everything I told you before, it's people navigating along the coast or rivers. Okay, you see where you're going. The Phoenicians did long distance trade through the Mediterranean Sea, and they developed the technology of navigation. Okay, the rest is too many details. This is one of the oldest cities, probably the city where the alphabet was born. Don't want to do this, there's different layers. Language, that's important. That's why definitions are really important. That's the first alphabet. This thing I actually bought a replica of the original one. So it's this big. It's this big, but it contains the alphabet, and it was probably used to teach the alphabet to children, to new scribes. So they had an alphabet. They could compose any word they could think of. 24 symbols, and this evolves. The oldest inscription we found is from 10th century BC, so that's when the alphabet is probably born. And these signs that you see, the 24 or 22 or 30, depending on the age, actually I would have to count. These will evolve into the Greek alphabet and the Hebrew alphabet and eventually the Roman alphabet, which is what we use today. So that's why it's important. That's the oldest inscription we have. And that's, that's the evolution. You can almost see one-to-one, how it moves to the other languages. Okay, so that's really the main importance, the main contribution they gave to Western civilization, the alphabet. Once you have the alphabet, you can do a lot of things with language. Once, at that point, the writing gets really close to the speaking, what you can express. Then they had these neighbors that, even if I wanted to, we know relatively little about their story. But their language, the Aramaic, is the language I mentioned before. Their language became very popular and became the international trade language, the English of the Middle East. Between 1000 and 600 BC, that was the most popular language. And at some point it was also the official language of one of the biggest empires around there. And we found evidence it was used from Egypt to China. So it was really a major international language, which is kind of funny because it had no major power behind it. So probably the only reason is that somehow it was easy to speak. And ordinary people used it, traders used it. It was probably an easy language to learn. And it did adopt the alphabet of the Phoenicians. That's why I put it under the Phoenician title. And eventually it was adopted also by the Jews in Palestine, but that's not special. That's, the whole region probably had Aramaic as the main language of ordinary people. And Jesus preached in Aramaic. That was his #1 language. It's a variation of the Phoenician alphabet. This is kind of just trivia. This is actually famous, I don't remember the name, but this medallion is famous. There's a horse, there's a map, and this is the map. And if this is Britain, this is Europe, this is Africa, what is this? This is 1,000 years before Columbus. So it could be that it was just some kind of icon, logo, or it could be that they actually knew that there's a land to the west of Spain.